Hi, welcome back. We're going to do something a bit more up to date, a bit more today. We're going to do the virus. Now, obviously, a lot of people will kind of get the feeling there's something else going on other than a virus and Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth. There's a sense of, I don't know, the old society's gone. We're entering into a new age. Now, I'm going to read you a couple of things and we'll go from there. So here's the Feds lift the gain of function research pause, which is the National Institute of Health today lifted a 3-year moratorium on funding gain of function research on potential pandemic viruses such as avian flu, SARS and MERS, opening the door for certain types of research to resume. The action coincides with today's release of the US Department of Health and Human Services framework for guiding funding decisions about proposed research involving pathogens that have enhanced potential for creating pandemics. Now that is in the University of Minnesota. It's easy to find, there's no problems at all. Gain of function basically means bioweapons. Gain of function means pretty much what you think it means, which is research into making stuff worse. Now, that's not a secret, but why? Why would they want to research a flu virus? Now, as nasty as bioweapons are, I think we can all agree, regardless of whether you put them onto your enemies or not, it's just not a very good way to go. But what use is creating basically a gain of function on a virus. What seems to have happened is apparently there's what's called a furin cleavage site, which enables the bat virus, the coronavirus, to attach itself to ACE2 receptors in the human body. Now I'm going to link to Chris Mortensen over at Peak Prosperity, who's done an amazing job at keeping everyone up to date with factual information. So if people want to know a bit more scientific stuff, he's far better versed than many people I've seen, and is able to, should we say, decipher so-called scientific papers on the matter. But what I'm more interested in is the fact that this is so easy to find. Now, I can tell you how I know it supposedly got out, this virus, which was a young lady who worked at the Wuhan lab. Her body was sent to the crematorium, and it was one of the chaps at the crematorium who contracted the virus, and he went to then see Dr. Lee. So Dr. Lee, as we know, is a doctor who was on social media in China talking to other doctors about a virus, and obviously the government shut him down and then apologised, and he died. Dr. Lee contracted and helped spread the virus after contracting it from the chap from the crematorium. So the story goes, but again, this information's not that hard to find. Now, last week I think we did the Mandela effect, and no, we didn't. We did Jack the Ripper last week. Before we did the Mandela effect, I'm losing time, and we see firsthand at how easily stuff is covered up. Now, a little bit of inside information. My father was a Conservative Party agent, and he was involved and was part of, should we say, what's called Section D, which is news suppression. To give you an example, there was a family near me that was murdered in Zimbabwe, and the government Section D'd it. This was in the 70s, because for some reason it was decided that the narrative was that the Zimbabwe takeover was a peaceful one, and it wasn't. There was a lot of murdered people, and the news was suppressed. Now that's a fact. There's also a book just come out of some very nasty murders that happened in Derbyshire, and it was the Moors murders. It was the same time as Peter Sutcliffe. I actually happened to remember the police chase through Derbyshire as well, which was quite frightening, and especially when you're a kid and they're chasing after an axe murderer, and he was shot, and that was about 40 years ago. And I can tell you for a fact the story that's open now is most certainly not the whole story. There's other things to it, but because I'm not sure who's alive or who's not, it's not my business to say. So what I can be certain is what you see, what you can find quite easily, is not what it's all about. It's a bit like Black Lives Matter and the paedophilia stuff that's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell. This is all too easy. I mean, there's a lot of people on this paedophile thing, and rightly so. It's some horrendous stuff that's been going on. But I can't help thinking it's all a diversion. I mean, Epstein and all these sort of people, I know saying these words on YouTube probably get me sunk and booted off somewhere, but I don't care. So it's all a diversion from something much bigger, I believe. And I'm not going to ever sort of say this is exactly what I think it is, because A, I think it's quite scary, and B, it's maybe wrong. But I do know for a fact this is not about a virus. The governments will give you some predictions as to what I believe is going to happen. Okay, so we're going to get a second wave. I knew that from the start. We're going to get a second wave a bit later on in the year and expect more lockdowns. Now, I do expect some countries to start shutting their borders. Not only that, but to build bigger fences. So for those of you who don't know, there are fences up between Switzerland and Germany. There are fences up between Austria and Hungary, and I believe Austria and Slovenia now as well. Peru shut its borders, Kazakhstan. We're going to see more countries, I believe, shut their borders. Peru, Bolivia, those sort of places. So basically, that's what I think is going to happen. I don't think this Bill Gates giving us all the vaccines and so on and so forth. I mean, I think people realise by now you'd have to be pretty insane to want to be taking vaccines all over the place. It is a virus, it's a real virus, it's how it's got out, why it's here. How it's got out is irrelevant, I think. We need to look at why it's here. If we look at the Anglo-Saxon mission, which predicted this down in 2010, and I'll leave you a link to it as well, exactly what happens, that China will catch a flu, as will the rest of the world, and we'll all be on lockdown. Now, who could have predicted we would be on lockdown? So, is it man-made? Is it natural? Right now, that's irrelevant. I don't think there's necessarily anyone twirling their moustaches. Do I think it's this cabal that are trying to gain more power over us? Well, they don't really need much more power. I mean, they seem to have all the money anyway. What do they want? We look at things like in cahoots with extra-dimensional beings, which look to suppress humanity because they feed off fear and that sort of thing. Now, these things do exist. They really do. I think some big changes coming. I think there's some big changes coming to the very fabric of society. I don't think it's coming this year, so I don't need to worry about it. But what I would say is you're going to expect a lot of diversions. That means potentially a war, potentially a mini war. Wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of nuclear bombs go off. Don't worry, it won't be a nuclear war. We can see the push and pull with China and Australia and China. Go on, Australia. Plucky lot. Yeah. But we are seeing a lot of things during the pandemic, so I'm going to bring your attention to. One is the magnetosphere weakening. Now, scientists don't understand why the magnetosphere is weakening, and that was a big news headline. We're seeing space rockets going up in the sky. Thank you, Elon, for messing that up. There's a nice dive before all that kind of stuff goes up. We're going to start seeing a lot of that. Jeff Bezos is talking about living in space. Well, the Australian Prime Minister recently announced a $230 billion investment into the Australian space project. United Arab Emirates have got a space project. China is talking about people living in space or near the space station or building a huge space station. No doubt Russia and other countries are doing the same as well. We've also got, in November, there was scientists brought out an open paper. In no good conscience could they say that we can carry on like we are, that we're about to fall off the edge of a cliff in terms of the global warming. Now, I'm not going to go fully into global warming and that sort of thing. I think everyone can make up their own mind as to what's going on. One thing we could all agree on is we're making a right old royal mess of this place. We're making a mess of it in terms of the environment. We're making a mess of it in terms of looking after each other and looking out for each other, which is really the most important thing that we should be doing. But we get diverted all the time. So the virus, I looked into the virus. I even put together, now I give you a little bit of an idea of what I do is I do events. I do temporary structures, that sort of thing. Now in February, I put together a website. It's there. I won't go into it. If anyone really wants to know it, I can send it, but it's crap. I just put it up quickly just so we could do things like drive-through testing centres, drive-through pharmacies and field hospitals. A very similar plan as to what was taken up by the government 2 months later. The virus actually swept through. Most of you will have been ill January, February, some of you March, but most of you will have been ill December, January, February. It swept through and it's been lingering about. What seems to be happening is it lingers around our body and then re-attacks us. Don't worry, tends to be much more the weak and infirm. My dear old grandmother is in isolation, and quite frankly I think she'd rather be seeing her family and cop it if she's going to cop it, rather being isolated. A lot of that isolation and separation is part of it. We have to wear masks in supermarkets in July. Shutting the door after the horse is bolted doesn't even cover it. It's insane. It's absolute nuts. You can go and have a drink and you can go to the gym, but you can't go to a casino because of a virus. It makes no sense, and the fact it makes no sense, people should open their eyes. I think there's a real problem at the moment isn't the virus, it's the way people are acting to it. Grassing each other up for not keeping social distance. I mean, that's so disappointing. Look after yourselves, fine. If you're worried about things, look after yourselves. But unless you're informed, keep your beakies out of other people's business, quite frankly. People are so quick to jump to obedient dogs. As Rashid Batter rightly said, we're voluntarily muzzling ourselves like dogs. Now, masks are useful. I'm not saying mask works or masks don't work. That's irrelevant. The way the virus spread is not like how you've been told. It doesn't jump 2 meters across a room unless you start spitting in people's faces. Have a think about what you're being told. There's a lot of people telling people to wake up right now, and I'm one of them. Not because I have any benefit in that. There's only negative connotations to come from my point of view, you know, conspiracy theorist and doommonger and sayer and so on and so forth. But the big thing that has disappointed me is people's actions to it, and their actions to each other. I mean, taking the first opportunity, people are sneering at each other, people are tussing at each other. I mean, we sat down, it was 2 meters away from someone, go away. And it's like, really? It's surprising me how quickly people take to judging others, snitching on others, being mean to each other. And that, above everything that might be happening, above what it's covering up, whether it's man-made, whether it's not, that's the most important thing. And most people are failing miserably. I mean miserably. Absolutely atrociously. So just be good to yourselves and be good to each other and stop grassing each other up for bloody nothing. I hope that's helped.